Welcome all to this quick video review of the ATN-X sight. I'll just quickly run through a few photos to show you the setup of the scope. It's got a small infrared torch on the side there, mounted on a Tikka 308 varmint, just to give you a bit of idea for the size of the thing. It's not a small scope and it is heavy. At the back you can see behind the scope is a pouch that carries a portable battery case, which I think is far more efficient than running 4 AA batteries, which only lasted me about an hour of non-continuous use. So that's set up at the back and the cord runs through to the scope, and this is just a view from the rear of the rifle. I'll now do a little bit of video as best I can to show you the actual display. And guys, I just want to show you here pretty much how you would look through a ATN-X sight. I've used my iPhone here to get in amongst the viewing part of the scope, and you can see it's pretty awkward, and I felt like that was how it was in real life as well. You really have to get your eye up in that viewing area to be able to see the full screen. So I'm just going to run through a few of the options using the tools. Now, the photos I showed you before, you could see the buttons on the top of the scope, and that's how you cycle through all the options. So the first thing I'll show you is the settings, and there's night vision, photo, video, display, profile 0 and settings. The ones that I'm not going to run through everything because you can read the manual to learn how all of that works. But if you just press the menu button, you're back here at the main screen, and this is your shooting screen. Don't worry, those running rainbow colors are just something that happened when I put the iPhone up to the scope. You don't actually see that when you're operating the scope. Now I'm just going to show you, there's a zoom function you can see in the top right. It's a 5 to 25. I'll be able to show you a bit later that at 25 times in dark conditions you pretty much can't see anything, so I would never be recommending that you use that. In the daytime it's a different story, and I'll show you a bit later on how that zoom looks at full magnification. So just to show you what I was mentioning before, this is the settings screen, and this is what I will show you how to use. I'll take you down to the display firstly to show you the reticle styles that are available on the scope. I think this is pretty cool. You can choose the shape of the reticle, and you can also change the color of it. So these are the various shapes here. I was using the one second from the left at the top, but there's a variety of different ones there, as you can see. And it's just simply a matter of scrolling through and selecting the one that you want to use. If I go back, I can show you that the color changes as well. And there's a variety of colours here. I just went with the red. It seems the most sensible, but there's a whole heap of colours there. You can choose whatever colour tickles your fancy there. Now I just want to show you very briefly the idea behind the zeroing system on this rifle. And I can say that it did take me with the 308 about 12 or 15 rounds to get it zeroed at 130 yards. So you enter the zero setup here, and basically the theory is that you shoot a bullet and then you move the crosshair to reflect where that bullet impacted. Now, in theory, if your gun was in a vise, all nice and tight, this would work quite well and it'd be pretty quick, and a lot of people would actually do that with a manual scope. But I did find in my case, I didn't have any of those things. I was out in the bush and it took a while. In saying that, after I got it zeroed, it held at 0 for the rest of the trip, and I never had an issue with it. But it was a bit of a pain when you squish down behind the scope with your eye right up in there trying to get everything sorted. And it took probably half an hour, 45 minutes, and I had a pretty sore neck. But once you've moved it to where you want it to be, you save and exit. I just discarded the changes because I had it zeroed. I'll just show you quickly now how you open up the side compartment here. That's where your micro SD goes in, and you can actually record everything that you look through, and that's why I've got a bit of footage coming up. So it's a little micro SD, bit of a pain, goes in there. After you've got it in, there's a cap that goes on top of it, and you've got to screw it in. Unfortunately, you have to tighten it with a coin or something like that, which I think is a bit old school, but it does the job. So you can see me tightening it up there, and eventually get the coin and tighten it up. Now let's take it out into the field so I can show you how it operates in real life. Now this was at about between 5 and 6 o'clock late autumn in Australia. So it gets dark around about 6 or 6:30 probably this time of year. And I just want to show you here what the zoom looks like. Now you see me zooming in, I think I've gone from 5 all the way up to 25 here. You can see it starts to get quite blurry, and you can imagine at night time with night vision that is not a comfortable picture to look at, but in the daytime it does work. I had it wound way back for what I was using it for, and that seemed to do the job just fine. The reticle is nice and clear, and I can tell you the image here is much better than when you're looking through it with the bare eye. That being said, you can actually link it up to an iPhone, I think, and that would probably be a better way to view it in my opinion, but I didn't get time to do that. I just wanted to review it as it is. Now, according to my notes, I took this footage at 5:38 p.m. and these goats were at 370 yards according to my Swarovski rangefinder binoculars. So this is, I would think, a pretty common hunting situation in terms of lighting and distance, especially once you first spot animals. It did have difficulty focusing. I am playing with the focus here, but I was trying to get it as clear as possible, and that was as good as I can get it now. At this time, it maintains quite a bit of colour, and also it's fairly sharp. I mean, for a digital image, it lets you know exactly what you're looking at, and you can see that the reticle remains nice and sharp and focused, which is definitely a benefit. That was at 25 times magnification, I'm pretty sure. So I can show you here when I wind it back that the image becomes a lot clearer, and that's what I would use if I was hunting, is winding it back quite a bit. So I'll show you that now. About there looks pretty good to me. And remember, that's 370 yards, so to use for a digital scope, given all the uncomfortable issues I was talking about, I wouldn't see people taking a much longer shot than that with this scope. This is some footage right on the fringe of darkness, and these are a pack of horses. It would have been a similar distance away. There's a black horse there, which stands out quite well, but that is a horse, and there are very few animals, at least in Australia, that you're going to be shooting at that big. You can see what I was talking about here. Once you zoom in, you pretty much lose any kind of clarity, and when you're looking back in retrospect, yeah, that's a horse, but in real life hunting situation, you don't want to be guessing what an animal is when you're looking through the scope. This is a bit of footage of the goats, and I can show you here what I'm doing is turning the infrared torch on and off, and it started with it on and now it's off. That was a small infrared torch, but it's not something that would be uncommonly used because you don't want to put a massive torch on a night vision scope. For me, that defeats the purpose. So that's with it on, and these goats again are probably 300, 400 yards away. In my opinion, it doesn't make a huge difference, and the overall image isn't great at all. Believe it or not, this is a fox in the scope. So this is with the infrared torch on. You can see the eye shine. I could not make out much more than that. I can show you a bit later where I got it a bit clearer, and I was quite lucky this fox just sat there. Unfortunately, I couldn't shoot because the backdrop wasn't safe, especially with the 308. I was disappointed with this. I've had a lot of time hunting this property with a torch on top of my gun, and I found it to be a lot more effective, quicker and efficient than with this night vision scope. I found it really hard to focus, I found it really hard to find the animals in it, and ultimately it resulted in me not being able to shoot at least 3 other foxes that I couldn't even get footage of. This is the only one I got footage of, and I'll just fast forward now to show you some of that footage. You can see, yep, that's a fox. I'm telling you that because I saw it with my torch. But there is no way I would take that shot through that night vision scope without any other confirmation that that's a fox. Believe it or not, this is a few deer, and this represents entirely my biggest problem with the ATN Excite. With the small infrared torch on, that is as good an image as I could get. I only found those deer because I had my actual torch and I was looking around for them. Finally, I just wanted to show you another fox that I spotted with my torch, and I can show you here how big a difference it makes when there's an actual light source for the night vision scope to work off. But again, that would defeat the purpose of having a night vision scope because you light up the whole area anyway. But this is what it looks like with a proper torch. You can see the fox there for a fleeting second. I had to shut it down because I was trying to get footage with the scope. But that's as good as it gets, unfortunately. I'll show you here, turn it back on. He popped his head up and then moved away off to the left there. And by that stage, you've got a big bloody torch on it anyway, so why not take a shot with a normal scope? Guys, unfortunately, this isn't an entirely positive review. I have 6 main points to make about this ATN Excite. The first is that the 4AA batteries from which this thing runs, leaving aside the portable battery pack, would only last you an hour of non-continuous use. 1 hour for 4AA batteries is not great at all. The second thing about it is that the scope is so big and bulky. That's not to be unexpected, of course, but I found the problem was that using this as a scouting tool, that is, using the night vision to try and spot animals, was made very difficult by the size and weight of the thing. The third thing is that the view through the display is very, very difficult to get used to. I never got comfortable enough to see the whole screen, and I think that the iPhone footage that I showed you before was even better. The Bluetooth function could correct that, but again, I wanted to review it as it is, so I never got to use it. The fourth issue I have with it is that the night vision is practically useless without a big infrared torch. What I mean by that is to be able to spot animals and identify them within, say, 400 yards is very, very difficult. Within 40 yards or 50 yards, it makes a bit of a difference with that little infrared torch, but other than that, I didn't find it to be very effective at all. The fifth thing I would say is that as a scouting tool, this is no good. For reasons I explained earlier, the fact that it was big, but also because you have to squish your eye into the viewer, and also the time it takes for the image to be processed, etc., etc. It is not easy to spot animals with this scope to then be able to pursue them. The final thing that I'll say is that I feel that what you can do with this setup, you can achieve with more efficiency and with lighter weight, with a torch on top of a rifle. It's quicker, it's lighter, and it's easier, and there's no messing about. Of course, you don't have the recording function, but given you can't really see the animals too well anyway, I don't think that that's a great loss. I will say this about the Excite, it's a cool thing to be able to record daytime hunts, but if you're going to do that again, I wouldn't be using anything over a 243 because the recoil would throw the image off as soon as you shot. Overall, guys, if you want to have a look at this thing, give it a whirl. I'm sure with a bigger infrared torch and a bit more time, I could have made this work a lot better, but from what I'd seen, it's not something that I want to use too often. I think thermal will be a lot cooler, and hopefully down the track I can review something like that. Thanks for watching. Bye.